Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Therapist Plays The Beginner's Guide. My name is Brady, and on this channel, I like to break down games and other media from a psychological perspective. Now, normally I just play the game and talk about it as I go, but I want to do something a little different with this one. I want to take you behind the scenes a little bit and show you what it's like to actually make a series like this. Partially because I think it's really important to be transparent that what you see online isn't always how things are in reality. And what a creator chooses to show you about their creation is often more intentional than you may think. So let's get started with The Beginner's Guide. And this is a game that I was recommended to play after I finished my analysis series on The Stanley Parable, another game by the same creator, Davey Wreden. Hello, and welcome to Therapist Plays The Beginner's Guide. So this is coming just after I finish my Stanley player. So this is coming just after I finish my Stanley Parable playthrough. And this was highly recommended by the community to that game. All I really know is that it's from the same creator. And yeah, I guess like maybe I can expect some similar kind of themes, or I'm not really sure actually. This is a very different style. Like even just the menu gives me a very different tone. Like Stanley Parable was like quite sarcastic, and a lot of its like subversiveness was revealed over time. So yeah, I'm very curious. Let's begin the beginner's guide. See what kind of game this is. Here's some birds.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing The Beginner's Guide.
Oh God, no more narration.
I wrote The Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011.
Okay.
We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Kota. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Kota in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction.
Okay, I just have to say, this is already sounding like I feel very in my element here. I'm like, oh, okay, this is therapy for you. Like, just that little hesitation to start talking about this person is quite revealing. Okay, this is going to get interesting.
I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Kota learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Kota's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Kota starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever.
Okay, wait, hold on. I might like interrupt the narration a little bit if they're like quite lengthy sections, because there's a lot going on here, like in what David Wreden is talking about that I don't want to overlook. So there's a couple of things I'm usually listening for, like when someone starts telling me a story, whether that's like just someone telling me a story, you know, generally, or whether I'm listening with my like therapist brain, although it's kind of hard to like not listen with that part all the time anyways. But I am always listening for like, what's the like framing that we're putting this story in. Because the framing is about context, right? And what do they want me to understand, and in what order do they want me to understand it, right? And that context is basically there to help justify. And that context and that context Okay, so this kind of stuff usually gets cut out of the video, but like I said, I'm going to leave some of my process for figuring out my analysis in this time so that you can see how my ideas come together. I don't script any of my videos, and so I don't have the benefit of knowing exactly how I'm going to present my ideas until I start saying them out loud. There's a lot of false starts, retakes, and adjustments that I make as I go through the recording. And then when I'm editing the video, I choose the best take and cut together the most succinct version of my dialogue that I can. And I'll be honest, it's a bit awkward to show this part of the process to you because I obviously only want to show you the best version of myself at all times. But I also want to be vulnerable too. It's a tricky balance to find. And I just thought it would be interesting to show you this time. And that context is usually there to help justify, okay? Justify behaviors or a perspective, right? Why I acted this way or why I think this way. So for example, if you were to ask me like, why is your channel called Eurobrady, right? Like what is that? Like where would I start? What framing would I give you and how would I justify that naming? Well, I would say to you, like, I grew up in America, but then I moved to Europe when I was like a teenager. Immediately, I'm giving you contrasts between like two perspectives, a major perspective shift that happened at a developmental point in my life, very formative point. And I felt more connected to this culture that wasn't actually the one I grew up in than the one that I had to return to later in life. And I miss that culture. And that's kind of like my way of keeping that like present for me is I kind of draw this line between like, the American Brady and the Euro Brady. And so I'm giving you these layers, right? Like they're to justify the behavior of like why I named my channel that, uh, and why I have this perspective. And so my goal with like telling that story is so that I'm not misunderstood, right? So that there's enough context or justification for uh, certain critiques that I might have about like American culture or like why I emphasize the importance of certain cultural or social values that I learned from over there, for example. There's certain things I want people to think about me. I want them to think I'm like worldly and whatever else, right? Like there's actually quite a lot in just that like little story, just unpacking that, right? So I am always listening for like, okay, like this person has an agenda. They hold an image of themselves in their mind, and you have to translate a very complicated, very like historied, detailed view of yourself to someone else in a very short time. Expect that they are listening and that their own biases are attaching to the same value points that you are. And so, like, you're trying to layer those story points in a certain way that's appealing to them. And so, like, what we're hearing from David is that in 2008, he was going through some things. And that's when this like relationship, both with Kota and with Kota's art, started to become important to him. Like those two ideas are actually really important. They're clearly connected. Otherwise, you don't start that off in saying, like, I'm just really interested in this creative project of this person that I know. No, like there's a sensitivity to the work and Coda and something's there because of that. Like there was like a little shakiness in that like introduction, and maybe I don't know, like there's a nervousness to present this in a way that captures how meaningful it clearly is to David Reedon, so that we understand, right? Like we need to have the same context that he does for why this is important to understand why he has created his own works, like let's say the Stanley Parable. And okay, there's a lot of stuff happening in my brain right now because I'm thinking this is going to be like one of the hardest games to analyze because I played the Stanley Parable. I know that there is an intelligent creative mind behind it who is like 10 layers deep in subtext at every moment. And I also know that the real person, David Reedon, is presenting to me a fictional version of himself to present a real or maybe fictional scenario that really did happen to him or just represents something that happened to him. Like, there's a lot of meta stuff. And like, I do the same thing. Like, Eurobrady isn't really me. It's like a character that I present to you, but it's also kind of me. Okay, this is going to be tough. I see why you all wanted me to play this. Like, I think this is going to be one of the hardest ones to do, but we're here. Let's do it. Okay. It's 2008. This is an important person to him. These things that Kota made are important to him. Why?
And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day, he just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Kota. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveywreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Kota's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
Okay. So at some point, Kota stopped making games, and we don't know why. And you can see that that's like really troubling for David because he's missing this, right? There is no current justification or context for the behavior of stopping to create these games, right? And for the perspective of why that stopped being an important outlet to Kota, or maybe why they stopped sharing them, or why they were putting all their game ideas in the garbage bin. Like, you can see that for someone like, you can see that that's like a troubling thing, right? That's causing David Reedon, or the character of David Reedon, to pursue these things. And if we can't get them from Kota themselves, like, we can't just ask, like, hey, why did you stop making games? He's poring over the creations looking for this. But that can get really tricky because, at least it's just from the first game there, like, they're pretty abstract. We'll take a look at this next one, but how much context can you draw, and how much justification for real behaviors and actual perspectives that Kota feels are you going to get from what are abstractions in his creative works, like things that are interpretive? There's a chance that like you don't interpret everything correctly because like the message that people put in their art is like very personal, and sometimes there's explicit meaning delivered, by a creator, and sometimes it's more implicit. David Reedon is explicitly communicating through the medium of this video game the metatextual layer of like peeking behind the scenes of incomplete works, but there's an implicit storyline about like judging people by their creations, and there's just okay, like I'll continue here because there's a lot of stuff like layered on top of each other. This is going to get confusing, I think. But it's also really exciting because I like a good sort of mind puzzle, you know. That's why I'm a therapist. Like I love to try to piece together uh the meaning of things, but even more so to help people discover meaning in their lives. Because as much as looking through someone's creative works can be a puzzle box, so can looking into your own life. Right? Like we don't always have the most clear meaning for our own, like to justify to ourselves, why do I keep acting like this? Why do I keep falling into these patterns, pursuing those kinds of people when historically they've not been good for me? Like, why do I have the perspective of attachments that rationally are unhealthy? Like, this is a very precious thing to go in pursuit of, and how you find it is not always one dimensional or repeatable, right? Whenever we do therapy, we start fresh, like from the bottom up of someone's life. Like we talk about childhood and then adolescence, and like we work our way up because all that is necessary. So this is like the therapy of someone's creations and how they became who they are. Oh my god, they gave me a gun. They should not give me a gun.
This game is called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Kota.
Escape from Whisper. Okay. Do I shoot things? Oh, I do shoot things. Whisper machine. There's nothing to shoot.
Security code breached. Hostile alien life forms inbound.
Where are these hostile alien life forms?
It kinda looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere.
I do think that.
Clearly there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets.
Really?
Ultimately, we don't really know. Maybe Kota thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
Enemy force neutralized. Begin.
I think we should talk about his games for what they are rather than for what they are not. But how do you know what they are? Like, I guess what he's talking about is just exactly as they present themselves. But didn't he say before, like, I think that there's a lot more meaning to these than even Kota realized, or something like that? That's not taking things for what they are. And now if we go into like the layer of like the game developer perspective, I'm not a game developer, but you can apply a psychology to that, which is to say that like as people, we develop schemas, essentially schematics, right? Like a building block for your brain to have kind of a shorthand of understanding something familiar. So some schemas are really simple. They're like, let's say if you live in America, fire trucks are red. You sort of file that away in your schematic about fire trucks so that your brain does not need to like reinvent that idea every time you see one, right? Now you'll update this if you ever see a green fire truck or if you go to Europe and they're different culture to culture, and your schema would just sort of change. It would expand to include the idea that like some fire trucks are red in this location. And so you'll update your like schemas over time based on new information. However, things get complicated when you think about the schemas that are more subjective and emotionally informed. Like, for example, all mothers mistreat their children. This is one of the moments where I really care about delivery. I'm not capable of being loved by anyone. See, I want you to have an emotional reaction to what I'm saying here. And so I got to get it right every time. And I don't always get it right. Every time I try something new, I fail at it. Like you have schemas that sound like that. right? That are foundational building blocks of your personality and your understanding of yourself. And those are very hard to change, right? They involve also looking at behaviors and perspective and understanding how those schemas formed and starting to try to adjust them, challenge them, update them, that sort of thing. This gets really in depth. But as a gamer, right? Like you have a schema of if you put a gun in my hand and there's a sound going off and you say that there's aliens, right? Like what my brain does is it reaches into my sort of building block for that scenario, those like little pieces. And you know what comes up? Halo. Like that's my foundational schema for like, where are the aliens? You know, I'm on board, you know, the forward unto dawn. Like, okay, wait, I just gotta pause for a second here and correct myself. This is not like part of me wanting to show you the process or anything. Like this is just actually something that really frustrates me. As I'm editing this, I realized that here I'm talking about the opening to Halo Combat Evolved, where you're fighting off a boarding party of aliens at the beginning of the game. And I said that this takes place on the Forward Unto Dawn, which is the name of a ship in the game. But actually, the ship that you're on in the beginning of Halo Combat Evolved is called the Pillar of Autumn. The Forward Unto Dawn is like another ship that comes into the story much later. These kinds of errors are annoying, especially because you just know that there's going to be tons of comments on the video correcting you, which is fine, but it can be pretty embarrassing, especially since the point I'm making here is about how specific and formative this game is to me. So to get something small like that wrong, it can feel like you're harming your credibility or something. Really, this one's not that bad, and I can usually just cut around the error, but there have been times where I've just cut out entire sections of commentary solely to avoid the embarrassment. You know, I just wish I could make something that's perfect, like no mistakes, no errors, just exactly as I imagine things in my head. And even with the ability to edit my videos, I still mess things up over and over again. This is a Covenant invasion, you know, because that was my formative experience with that genre. And this experience is informed by that. My expectations are formed by that. Being creative and subversive is often about understanding what the schemas of a player or a person experiencing your art is, and kind of critiquing that or challenging it or presenting new obstacles that are familiar enough that the player can navigate them and finds them fun and interesting, but are not so familiar that it's boring. And so you're also kind of contending with the schemas of players. And yeah, I guess in this scenario, like, I don't know, maybe as the game was intended, like this is all it is. We don't really know that.
I love how you can see the bottom of the universe from this room.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the skybox. Okay, what am I supposed to do here? Even my brain. Do you see how, like, right there, I went into my schema about, like, what am I supposed to do here? I'm supposed to solve puzzles. I'm supposed to progress. I'm supposed to move forward. As a gamer, as a content creator, I'm supposed to keep you interested. I'm supposed to demonstrate my expertise as a therapist. I'm supposed to be funny, entertaining, charismatic. I'm supposed to maintain the pacing of this video. I don't want to pause for too long. I don't want to talk for too long. I don't want to go too long without talking. Like, what am I supposed to do? Accesses whatever scheme I have. And that's like kind of determining my decisions here. But I feel like too deep in the thinking about the thinking right now, which is probably, well, not probably, maybe the point. I don't know. I'm very confused.
Apparently, this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
What? I thought you just said, let's take this for what it is. But you're now skipping past it?
Or if you'd really like to solve the labyrinth, you're welcome to do that too.
I would like to solve the labyrinth. Listen, I played the Stanley Parable, all right? When you tell me not to do something, guess what? I kind of like to see if I can do it. But it seems like David has like also an agenda, right? My agenda as the video creator is to keep you interested in whatever else, but his is as the narrator of this game to make sure I'm not lost so that he can continue the story. But at the same time, like, I imagine David Reedon actually designed this obtusely on purpose. It's too meta. It's too fucking meta.
This is the part that's interesting. The game has this narrative
It's all
about
interesting.
the whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Okay. It's like very Half-Life.
Hey, you there, in the engine room. You could save us all. That beam is powering the whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam. It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
I guess it really is more Half-Life than Halo because this is in the Source engine.
Let me pause
That's it?
for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Kota had initially intended when he was developing this level.
Dude, he's even doing what I was just doing, where I was like, let me pause for a moment. This is probably what this... I don't like this. Or do I? It's kind of perfect for me, like, because it feels like it is me. I feel like I'm looking in a mirror, and I like what I see, but I don't exactly like how it feels.
But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
Nothing? I just respawn? Do I have to go in again? Oh.
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Kota identifies something human about it, like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these real...
It's clear that after making this, but you just said we have no idea what he's thinking. That's quite a leap from pulling together the context and justification of this design. We're also justifying what my schema about like games and narrative tell me that this is just a bug. But having played the Stanley Parable, it's quite subversive. Bugs can also be part of the narrative. In this sense, he created a bug to be a part of the beginner's guide narrative. Too many fucking layers here. But in the context of the story, at least, that's such a contradiction, right? We do not know, actually, if what we're seeing was a justified behavior or a perspective. It could have been an error. It could have been incomplete, but he just said, this clearly lodges something in Kota's mind. Like, first of all, as well, it's not bad to do that. Like, I think that as a creator, you have to sort of dispossess yourself of one intention meaning once you hand it off to someone else. Like, whatever Kota designed here, I'm of the belief that, like, there's nothing wrong with David Reedon's interpretation of it. But if I am doing like a character analysis or a person analysis of the character of the fake David Reedon that we're listening to, not the real person, because like I could easily make that same leap in logic and say, the character of David Reedon in this game has made some leaps in logic about justifying Kota's behavior. I could leap to, that must be what the real David Reedon thinks, because I've also played his game. Like I could bring that schema in, but the actual truth is, I have no idea what the point of that was, what the point of this is. The only thing I can be certain about is like how am I reacting to it, and whatever interpretation I have of it is, you know, likely to be valid. I think up until the point you start making judgments about a real person based on what you see from their artwork, like expecting that you truly understand a person's pathos or their decisions based on what could be an abstract intended meaning, what could just be an error. There's just so much going on here. This is nuts.
Weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
There's also like clearly a focus for Reedon on the boundaries of his own schemas, but like maybe that's what's interesting about Kota's work to him, is it does enforce curiosity and challenge to his natural expectations. Like he was fascinated by the bottoming out of the universe. He's fascinated by a maze that seems to serve no purpose, as if any maze serves any purpose other than to delay or distract you from an objective or presents you an obstacle to overcome. He's fascinated by this idea of like peering beyond the curtain, that the boundaries and the walls of a game are artificial, and so there must be more meaning at the edge of the map or off of the map entirely, things that have not been mapped. That's where the real meaning lies, in both games and in people. So this is the point of the process where I start to zero in on kind of an angle of analysis. There's clear themes here of contradiction between behavior and perspective and something's intended meaning versus its interpretation of meaning. And so now that I've identified that theme, I can start pulling together all of the knowledge I have about how that subject relates to mental health or people in general. And so I start to look for ways to reinforce this argument, because the things I make have to have a point as well. Something that I have to say that's not necessarily a part of the game itself, but like the kind of meaning I'm getting from it. It has to feel important. Otherwise, what's the point of doing any of this? Okay. This can't move.
Yep. In this game, you can only walk backwards.
Oh. Okay. Past was behind her. So I guess there is one inference you can make about Kota based on that, is that there is an intention to place some limitations or restrictions on the player's movement and navigation to say something. The past was behind her. Okay. So I have to turn around before I move.
So it's a short and relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Kota's trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
Okay. I would agree with that. There's a I don't have a schema for this. Like, this doesn't represent a classic genre to me. And so my brain is searching for more unique context rather than relying on pre-existing context in my mind, which is making me more attentive to my surroundings. But am I just doing what he's doing? The future is always behind her. How will she find the strength? No.
It's a short little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that.
Okay.
Which to me is why it works, because it gets out quick. Okay, next one.
Oh, he's just flying through these. Okay. You're now entering... What?
And that's it. Okay, the meaning of this game won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting.
Please be patient with me.
Oftentimes, Kota would put bizarre titles like this one at the start of his games. I wish I'd known him at the time that he was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
Fair. Yeah, I mean, there is kind of a concern, maybe not a concern, but an eagerness to not lose you, me, the player, whoever, to make sure you're not missing any context. It's don't worry, this is gonna make sense later. I mean, I find myself doing this sometimes with my videos where I have to lean in and be I'm being fucking sarcastic about something, or I'm being actor Brady. I don't really hate this character. I'm just acting like I hate them to prove the analytical point. I also worry about this, as a creator, that someone's not gonna get it. And so, is it futile to try to clarify, this is what I really mean, don't misunderstand me? Or do you risk being too obtuse and people actually misunderstanding? I don't know. It's kind of complicated. It's kind of giving me a lot of thoughts. It's kind of making me think about a lot of my own issues with being a creative. I mean, I also understand the desire to fairly represent a work, but also add your own spin to it. He's trying to fairly represent Kota's work. Kota may not even be a real person, likely not. This is just a narrative. And by doing so, he's trying to demonstrate his own creative capacity to make a subversive narrative. What is he trying to get you to buy into? What idea about game development, about creativity, about psychology, about relationships? What is there to misinterpret? The more obfuscation you put in, the more intentional the confusion. And is that kind of what Kota's works are? They are kind of intentionally, it seems, obtuse. The goal is confusion, it seems. Or to challenge schemas, at least.
Once you've been slowed to an absolute crawl, the door at the top of the stairs opens. So why, if Kota's not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all? Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press the use key on your gamepad, it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
For such an insistence on fairly representing Kota's work, he's kind of bypassing a lot of his creative intentions to speed things along, skip us through the maze. If the point of the "you are now entering" level was to mislead your expectations, he comes in to say there is a meaning behind this, don't worry. why is there a desperation to have the same understanding, I guess? Well, I could also relate to that a little bit because whenever I play these games, especially like the choice-based ones, like when I played Disco Elysium, I was always up against these moments where people would sometimes get mad about like, I don't like that you chose this. You didn't experience the intended thing, you know? Uh, you baited us with the necktie and then didn't say. It's like, I get that when you have a precious experience with something, you want other people to experience it the same way, but that does defeat the purpose of a choice-based experience. And often the creator's intention in those sorts of things is to let the player decide. And to not experience a best narrative if they want to. Like, you have to have a lot of confidence in your work to do that. In a way, it's like David Reedon doesn't have a lot of confidence in Kota's work, or at least in our interpretation of it, to sort of get it without help. Or to not get lost and get frustrated and want to bypass some of these things. Like, there's quite an insecurity, I guess, about, well, I worked hard to get this context, this extra layer of meaning. Maybe I'm worried that someone else won't. Why are you trying to protect my experience or my understanding of this? What are you afraid would happen if I don't understand it? If I can't understand what you get about Kota's work, does that make it hard to understand you and whatever sort of attachment you have to him? Like, because there's clearly an attachment. I'm not exactly sure if it's a healthy one based on some of this. Because to me, that's part of the justification. Why the hyperfocus? Why the bypassing of the game design? Why the need to like overinterpret, but also to tell me to just accept it as it is? There's just a lot of contradictions. And that is one of my roles, I would say, in the therapeutic dialogue, is to be very mirror-like and present to people contradictions in their reasoning. Not contradictions based on like, I think your values are misaligned. That's not the goal. It's not important what my opinion is. But based on what you've said, that you have a value on intimacy, and yet you are engaging in infidelity, right? Like, based on what you've said, you express that you have a value around leadership, but you're not willing to take responsibility here. Like, it's usually like, based on values you've presented, I'm going to help you discover where there is some disharmony in your perspective or your behaviors. Usually there's some kind of disharmony, and that's what we're looking for, as a way to harmonize that. And this would be a lot of the material that I would be trying to unpack with someone like Reedon, if this was the subject of our therapy. I mean, is it really just going to let me kind of go at this pace? Because I'm expecting like a Stanley Parable style, if you don't choose to speed it up, I'm going to force you to anyways. Game filled with chairs, except one chair is floating.
A room that's warm and nice and filled with little ideas for games.
Play as a pair of floating eyes emitting footstep noises.
Kota would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. it can be a very slow climb to get there.
A very slow climb. Again, if I take what Reedon is saying as like actually a fair representation of Kota, which we don't know if it is, what he just said is Kota told me that I'm a warm and compassionate person and that the discovery of that is slow. And that's represented in his work. And yet, Reedon has accelerated you through the maze, explained to you all of the subversion, preempted you with clarity about there will be meaning to this. Just wait. Don't discount this. And I have broken the game so that you can get through this faster. Like, that is such a contradiction. You clearly resonated with what Kota said, and you clearly find it valuable as well to let people slowly discover things. But your perspective that that's important is not matching your behavior here. You're accelerating me through something while telling me it's important to slow down. It's very interesting, actually. You're telling me that it's important to you to interpret things, but you want to do a lot of the interpretation for me. This is like a very common presentation as you start to work in the process of therapy, is people do start to present contradictions and disharmony between their expressed perspective or values and their behaviors. And so then I'm like trying to work with them on getting 3 things to work on this, because the fact that there is this disharmony causes some discomfort, right? The result of these things not being aligned with one another usually causes some kind of insecurity, lack of confidence. It leads to regret because I say I'm on a diet, but then I binge eat and like then I feel bad, right? Like often it's just disharmony between a value and a behavior that causes a lot of like self-esteem issues. And so these are the things that I'm trying to help them find, is like, first, let's become aware of what the value conflict is. Let's look for some insight of why that presentation is happening, which we haven't seen a ton of just yet. And then what is the action we take to find some alignment? Right now, we're sort of building the case for like, we're identifying these conflicts, and it's illuminating. I'm not quite sure, but there is some discomfort in Reedon that I don't know exactly what it is because I can't communicate with him, but that's what we're listening for. Ready, set, fish. I mean, it's nonsense. Okay. You can see also, if you are doing your own psychoanalysis profile of me, if you've watched me play these kinds of games, I did not want to accelerate through the long stair climbing thing. Why? Like, what is it about me that I like to sort of, I don't know, go against expectation as well? Or maybe that's my desire to be like unique, or because I feel like he's delivering a lot of the context and telling me what to think and feel about it in a sense that defiance is my self-expression, where I'm like, oh, okay, like you took the guardrails off. I can accelerate through it, but guess what I'm not going to do to remain an individual? Why am I like this?
Well, this is new for Kota. It's an actual puzzle. Go ahead and see if you can...
I don't even know that it's a puzzle. You just told me it's a puzzle. Why'd you just tell me it's a puzzle? What are you so afraid of me discovering? Reading. Like, am I not going to figure it out? Am I not going to get what you got out of it? And now comes the second part of the analysis. So I've made my point about contradiction and disharmony and how Reedon presents his narrative. And now I want to demonstrate that same point by acting it out in the playthrough. So if you can't tell by the way I'm talking and acting here, the Brady you see on screen is now fully in character. Soon you're going to see lots of confusion, this desperate search for a solution and the frustration that I have. But none of it's real. It's all a part of the show. It's what I want you to see. And I do that because I don't want to just explain what's happening to you. I don't just want to say what the point of my work is. I really just want to show you. To me, explaining what's happening feels like the worst kind of delivery for the point that I'm trying to make with these videos. And so instead of explaining it to you, I'm going to now show you what that looks like.
Solve it.
Like he says, let's see if you can solve it. If you're so interested in me having that experience, why tell me that it is a puzzle to begin with? Like, you remove all of the discovery only to ask me to have the experience of discovery. Okay. So I just do that. Oh.
Don't forget that solution, because we're going to see this puzzle again soon. We're gonna see.
Will we? Will we see it again soon? Like, I just find that frustrating. In a very certain way. I do not find it frustrating when, I'm given some idea up front that, like, this is going to be important later. I'm okay with that. I actually like lots of games that handhold. Like, I like my subversive games and I like my subversive movies, but I also enjoy a good, like, Ubisoft checklist game every once in a while. There's, like, a lot of comfort in knowing what to expect. But I don't want a Ubisoft checklist in Elden Ring. When I turn on Elden Ring, I want to find my own way. What I don't like is the disharmony of, like, this is a game about figuring out what's going on. Let me tell you exactly what's going on, and let me tell you to remember this thing. That's the contradiction that, like, confuses me. And yet, I think I've fallen right into the trap of the game, because that's only one layer of what I'm seeing. Because I saw this. In the Whisper Machine thing. And Reedon hasn't said anything about that. I mean, maybe there's nothing to it, but maybe my, like, frustration is the red herring to the real secret.
So that seems to be it, right? You walk down a corridor, you solve a puzzle, you get to the end. Simple enough. All right, now I'm going to modify the game again, so that when you press the use key on your gamepad, it'll remove all of the walls from this room.
Okay. Do I have to do that? This time I think I do. Okay. Yeah, again, a fascination with the edges of the map, or...
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing.
Wow. It's almost like I've come to expect that there's more to it because you keep telling me.
I find it funny that this game comes after the Stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the Stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior. And then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player. So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
It's a good question. I mean, I find myself trying to understand David Reedon. Okay, so at this point, you may have noticed that I keep calling the creator of the game David Reedon instead of Davey Reedon. I do realize this mistake later on in the video, so please just bear with me until then. And this is another one of those errors that like I can't do anything about it now. It's too deeply baked into the entire video, so I just have to accept that this video it's just not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. More than like the game, because I know that the game is created by David Reedon as a abstract narrative element to make me think and question about not the real person, but the character. I'm going like circular in this analysis. Like I said, it's difficult.
Aha! So, this, combined with the entering game from earlier, tells us that Kota believes his games are connected somehow. It could even be that the stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that all of his games are meant to play a role in. There's some larger meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
Okay. I'm not resistant to that idea, like that there's a bigger meaning and all of that. It's just bizarre the way that that's like presented as figure this out yourself, but then I'm going to tell you. Like I said, I don't disagree with the interpretation, and I think it's fine to interpret.
For a second. Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do. So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development.
Okay.
To make all of these games, Kota is using an engine called Source. Like all engines, Source has certain things that it does well, and it has certain things that it does poorly. One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Kota's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well.
Fair.
The tools available to the creator shape what kinds of creative work they're going to end up making. You might consider paying attention to the architecture in Kota's games, to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good at producing linear, boxy corridors.
So that's like, you know, a bit of context and justification for his, for Kota's like game design and narrative intention. That's like very reasonable, like to make a leap in logic. Like the engine is designed this way, and so that makes a lot of sense. It's the other stuff that's like what he intended emotionally. Or what does Kota really think as a person that's a little bit like, I mean, you can't base that off of what are clearly the abstract things, but we're just desperate for that context to justify. I think the central point of confusion for Reedon was, why did Kota stop making games? I mean, it's like almost impossible for me to make a extrapolation, but there could be any number of practical or emotional reasons why Kota stopped making games. But it would be really presumptuous to start like defining like what those choices were, like based on personality. I mean, I'm not gonna walk down all of this stuff. I'm just gonna Fuck. Is this like a jail? The heck?
This prison, funny enough, in Kota's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
Okay, this is the one time I'm totally fine with that. Reminds me of the fucking 4-hour baby screaming achievement from Stanley Parable. So, I mean, at least, like, it is clear that Kota wanted the player to feel something, or understand something, or have some kind of point. I'm not really sure what,
This
but...
is something that he and I used to argue about a lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And I would always defend that, you know, all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
So what he just said about like going and checking every one of them, which is like quite, it's quite obsessive. That would be where I would say we can maybe find some insight, which we can think of as the sort of like what is happening, some kind of conflict, disharmony between value or perspective and behavior. The why and the action is sort of a how to work on it. But you take something like that and you can get some of the why, some of the insight, because like a statement of insight is like, I do this because I have a fear of being misunderstood. I do this because I avoid conflict. Like we're looking for something substantive that kind of ties together these patterns of behavior and why they don't agree naturally with like what we express our actual value is. Which is like what I'm hearing from Reedon is like, you know, it's important to let a creator's work be what they say it is. He gives me this whole library of playable games, but like I'm not satisfied with that. I have to go like investigate every single one. Like I struggle to accept things as they are because I want there to be more to it. Like we're looking for those kinds of statements, because that then gives us like some of the how. Like, do we need to do acceptance commitment therapy where we're like experimenting with our tolerance to other people's boundaries and standards? Like, are we doing some of that schema work to adjust some of those like core beliefs? Are we doing behavioral experimentations with like cognitive behavioral therapy to kind of challenge some of those distortions that keep these things in conflict? Like that will sort of give us the playbook when we have some of those why statements. But it's clear that like at this point, there's maybe some more obvious tension. Maybe it's tension between David Reedon and Kota. It's getting interesting though. Okay, I'm leaving the jail at least. This is a pretty uncomfortable environment to be in, to be honest.
It's the puzzle again.
Ah,
As the last time.
thanks, David. Or have I been calling him? Is it Davy? I think it's Davy. Okay, I've just been getting that wrong this whole time.
There's still no clear indication of what makes this puzzle so special that Kota is going to return to it over and over. But I promise
I don't know.
I'll share with you my interpretation very shortly.
Oh, I bet you will, Davey. Okay. I mean, but now I find myself on the lookout for like those little 3 dots. Because I feel like that's, I don't know, the secret. I haven't seen them in a while. You there.
Here, Kota begins using a kind of dialogue system that he fashioned out of the engine's chat capabilities. Use the buttons on your gamepad to respond.
Did you come from up above? What was up there? It was a world stamped with whiteness. Yes, there was an enormous prison I spent hours in. Yeah, the prison was the standout. That's the world above. You've been there. Now this is important. Did you have to get through a puzzle with 2 doors and swishes? Yes, I did. That was literally the last thing I did before coming here. I prefer not to tell you. After all, we've only just met. I do like that response. What? But you don't understand. We're trapped here. That puzzle is our only escape. We need to get through it. You think you want to get through, but trust me, you don't. Let me describe it for you. Let me tell you all about what's over there. I mean, I'm not sure how much this really matters. Let me describe it for you. No, that isn't possibly enough. I need to actually be there. I cannot simply be told what it is. I must see myself. I must escape this prison. There must be an ending. Holy shit, that sounds like me with the Stanley Parable. I'm like, where's the ending to this fucking game? There's gotta be a point. I get it, Davey. I do. How did you get here? Was there a puzzle you had to pass through? Should we just lie? I've been here this whole time. Fuck it, why not? Might as well be an agent of chaos. I suggest you go and see the puzzle sometime. It's not meant to be solved, but you can sit in the black space in the middle. Why would I do that? Oh, it's plenty peaceful. It may not seem that way at first, but you'll come to think so in time, eventually. Okay. I mean, there's 3 of them. 3 dots. 3 puzzles. We've seen 2.
And so we make one last descent down to the final floor of the level.
I mean, it's such a natural thing for people to try to find meaning in things. Like I really don't begrudge the character of Reedon for doing that. It's more the relationship between him and this person that's concerning. Starting to be of concern.
It's a lamppost. Okay,
Yeah.
I can't tell you quite why, but for some reason, Kota fixates on this lamppost. It's going to appear at the end of every single one of his games from here on out. I'll tell you what I think. I think that up to this point, he's been making really strange and abstract games with no clear purpose, and maybe you can only float around in that headspace for so long. Because now he wants something to hold on to. He wants a reference point. He wants the work to be leading to something. He wants a destination, which is what this lamppost is. It's a destination. We're going to see it in the work as well. His games are just going to become a lot more cohesive, a lot more fully developed, with more of a clear idea behind them. And as we go, that idea will get clearer and clearer and clearer.
Well, I mean, it was this game is connected to the internet. As you walk around, you can what I was going to say is that based on the Stanley Parable, Reedon loves the idea of like there not really being an ending, no real destination, which is a little bit torture for me who likes narrative closure. So I like the idea of having something grounding us. Oh, there's 3 dots as well. Okay, I do think there's something to that. Yeah, I mean, I search for that, and I will usually try to create it if there isn't any in my own way. I guess because I like, you know, the setup and payoff of storytelling, but also the self-discovery and like point of action from which we change and grow in our understanding that's the pursuit of therapy. I don't want to do therapy to just sort of sit around and say, yeah, here's all my problems and here's why I have them, and just do nothing then. Like, to sort of circle the drain on why we persistently have these patterns of behavior. Like, this is so important. So this seems like a turning point, though. Because according to Reedon, the narrative structure of these levels is about to change. And maybe things get a little more complex from here. So I think this is where we pause. I feel like there's still a lot I'm missing, though. You know, I'm also looking for understanding of like, okay, the expressed intention of this whole experience was I want like to get the message out to Kota that his work mattered, and so I'm sharing it with you, and maybe you'll share it with people, and we're trying to get a message to Kota by way of sharing these experiences, and I guess giving some of that context. We're trying to get a message to Kota, but it's not a simple message of I hope you make games again. There's something else, like something I'm missing here, that there's too much like emotional tension wrapped up in their relationship, whatever their relationship is. This whole game is a puzzle of the mind of the character of Kota, the character of Davy Reedon, the real person of Davy Reedon, as a kind of epilogue to the Stanley Parable and the spirit in contention that's with every creator, and the puzzle in our own minds of like why we have these reactions to it. I don't know what to think yet, because it feels like I'm not quite there. Like, I feel like the game has given me just enough to be curious and to have that like layer of questioning and concern and doubt. But I feel like there's, yeah, pieces I'm missing. So we're gonna go and search for them next time. So there you have it. A look behind the curtain of how I put these videos together. I hope that was helpful to see, but part of me wonders if I'm showing a little too much. I mean, like I said, I only want to show you the best parts of myself and my work. But with how many mistakes I make, I know I can't always do that. So hopefully by showing you these errors and how hard I work to cover them up, you can forgive me. I want you to forgive me. Next time I'll try to make everything a lot neater, okay? No more mistakes. I'll make sure that none of them get left in. So yeah, I hope you look forward to that, and I'll see you again for the next episode.